Tracy asks, there's a home that I really like, but my agent says it doesn't qualify for FHA. Why can't I buy it?
Tracy, that is a great question. And really it's a simple one to answer, but at the same time, it's a little bit complex. So when a property does not qualify for FHA financing, basically what that means in a normal case, in my experience, it could mean one of two things. Number one, and the most common, is that the property is in bad shape, that the property needs X amount of repairs. The seller is unable or unwilling to do those repairs, and so they rather avoid the FHA inspection, because any property that is being purchased with an FHA loan has to pass the FHA inspection. FHA has certain guidelines for properties that they maintain, and if the property just does not qualify, then it doesn't qualify. And if they accept an FHA offer, then when the appraisal is done and they see that the home needs substantial repairs, they're going to try to make the seller do those. So a lot of sellers are privy to that information, and they just say, no, I don't want to deal with that, so I'm not going to take any FHA offers, only conventional. That is super common, and it happens a lot. The second reason, which is not that big of a deal, and I'll just mention it super briefly, is that when we're talking about flipping and doing these kinds of flips, or when they buy a property, they remodel it, and then they sell it, there's a rule, an FHA rule, that says that there has to be 90 days between transfer of ownership. So if a flipper buys a house, they fix it up in 2 weeks, and then they try to sell it, you're not going to be able to buy that until 90 days pass. So a lot of them will just try to go conventional, try to find a conventional buyer so that they don't have to go through that whole FHA stuff, and they can just kind of loophole that rule, and they can sell it at whatever time. But if you're trying to go FHA, the property has to have at least 90 days since the last transfer of ownership for you to be able to buy it. So again, if there's an investor that just bought it, they fixed it up quick, and now they're looking to sell it, that property might be in good shape, but not enough time has passed so that you can buy it with an FHA loan, with an FHA mortgage. And so it's a super, super good question, because if you're in this process and you're searching for homes, you're looking online, and you find one that you like, and then you find out that it doesn't qualify for FHA, it can be frustrating. And there are some agents that don't really know why, or they don't take the time to maybe ask or study it out. So it's a phenomenal question. And especially if you're kind of in a lower price range, I'd say right now, if you're anywhere between, 180 to 230, you're going to find a lot of properties that are distressed, that need work, and that can't go FHA. Now, there is one way that I've personally seen it work, where a property that initially doesn't qualify for FHA can qualify, but it's going to require substantial effort on the buyer's part, because if the seller is not willing to do those repairs, then the buyer has to take care of those themselves. So you would basically have to fix the property before buying it so that it can pass the inspection, and then buy it on the back end. Does that make sense? So that might be something that you could look into. But again, I mean, if the property needs $15,000, $20,000, $25,000, you may simply not have it. If you already have to give a down payment, or you're paying for your own closing costs or whatnot, it can get tough. It can get really, really tough. So I've seen somebody do it when they have the cash, but it's not super common for that to happen. So when you see those kinds of things, what I would recommend is have your agent reach out to the listing agent and ask what the problem is. Why doesn't it qualify? Sometimes the repairs might be small, they might not be super big, and the seller just doesn't want to deal with that, so they're just trying to see if they can find a conventional buyer, because it's usually easier for sellers because there's not so many FHA restrictions. And maybe, if the repairs aren't huge, you can take care of them yourself and then purchase that property, if the seller will even take your offer, which in many cases they won't, because they're afraid that the bank is going to say no, and then they're going to waste time, and then they're not going to be able to sell. So that has to be in your favor as well, for the seller to allow you to try to get an FHA loan on that property. But if you can make it work and they say yes, and the repairs aren't substantial, maybe it could end up working out for you. But again, not super common. So great question, super great question. Hope it's helpful. Tag anybody in this video who you think this might be helpful for, and keep shooting me your questions, guys. I love answering them, love making these videos for you. Make sure to subscribe to my podcast. It's called The Tony Acosta Show. You can find that on SoundCloud, on Google Play, on Play Music, on iTunes. I go into things in much more depth there. So yeah, I would super appreciate it if you would do that. Thanks so much. Until next time.